The reviews of the new AMD 7000 series CPUs are out right now, and one thing is certain, the new Ryzen 7000 series are great performance. For example, the entry-level 760X is able to beat in some games the 12900K from Intel, their current flagship. But does this mean that the new Ryzen CPUs are worth the buy? Today we'll try to answer that question and talk about why the 5800X3D is still a much better choice for gamers. So let's start with the most obvious scenario, and let's assume that in the previous generation you upgraded your CPU, so you bought a new motherboard or you're using your previous motherboard from the 3000 series. You have a matching DDR4 memory kit, power supply that is able to support it all, and you have an efficient cooling system which is able to keep your current configuration nice and cool. So what is the cost of upgrading to the new AM5 platform? Well, it's quite high actually. First of all, you need a new motherboard with the new AM5 socket, which is completely different design than the previous AM4 socket. And the new motherboards are quite expensive. At this moment, they start at around $400–300, which is almost as much as the new 5800X3D. Apart from the new motherboard, you will also need a new DDR kit. The new generation motherboards and Ryzen 7000 series CPUs do not support DDR4 memory. Instead, you will need to buy DDR5 memory kits, which can be quite expensive. The better performing ones cost as much as $300 or even up to $400. Apart from that, you might have to look into new cooling system. The cooling systems in the new Ryzen 7000 series CPUs will play a big role. Why? Because the cooling system directly impacts the performance of your CPU. Finally, since we already mentioned bigger power, you might also need a bigger power supply. The new 7000 series CPUs from AMD can draw as much as twice the amount of power that the previous generation required. For example, the 7950X can draw 250 watts, which is over 2 times the amount of power required by the 5950X. We have a similar situation with the 7600X, which draws almost twice as much power as the 5600X required. This means that if you have a power supply which barely matches the previous generation's power demands, you should also look into a new power supply. So, taking it all into account, we're looking at a new motherboard, new memory kit, quite possibly a new cooling system, as well as a new PSU. When you add it all up, the cost of moving to AM5 was probably around $1,000. So now let's look at a slightly different scenario, and let's assume that you're still sitting on a 3000 series CPU from AMD or anything from Intel in the last 2 or 3 generations, and you want some more power. Even if you skipped 1 or 2 generations, I still think it's not worth it to go for 7000 series CPUs. Why? Because for the fraction of the money that is required to migrate to the new AM5 socket and DDR5 memory, you can get a 5800X3D and update your BIOS on your current motherboard, or you can buy a new motherboard if your current motherboard doesn't support 5800X3D at a much lower price than the new motherboards are coming. You can still reuse your old DDR4 memory kit and probably your cooling system as well, because the 5800X3D is only rated at around 105, I believe, or 110 watts, which means it will produce much less heat and require much less efficient cooling system than the new 7000 series CPUs. A new 5800X3D can go as low as $420, which I saw recently on sale on Amazon. So it costs around as much as a new motherboard for the 7000 series CPUs. So the 5800X3D should not only give you better performance, but also save you some money both on the initial cost of the purchase. You don't have to buy a motherboard, or even if you have to, it's going to be much cheaper than the newer ones, but also should help you save on electricity bills because it draws much lower power than the new generation Ryzen CPUs. So when would you want to consider a new 7000 series CPU? I think there's only one reason. If you do a lot of productivity work and every second, every minute that you can shave off a project really counts toward your earning, toward the time you spend on the project itself, then I think it might be reasonable to look into the new platform, because the increase in power, especially in multi-threaded application, is quite noticeable, anywhere from around 15 to even 50% in some cases. And yes, if the additional power is able to save you some time on a project, then I think it's really worth checking out. But I still think the 5800X3D is still the king when it comes to gaming performance. Even Intel in their newest event, when they announced the new generation, the 13th generation of Intel CPUs, basically confirmed that they're going to be slower or maybe just as fast as the 5800X3D. As you can see from the charts, even the new i9 basically matches in some scenarios the 5800 X3D. And remember, those charts are basically marketing charts, so they are supposed to present a product and from the best looking way, right? You want to buy the product, they want to show you that's going to be a big upgrade for you. So it means that it's a bit sugar coated and you should take it with a grain of salt. And for me, this is basically like a yellow or even a red flag that the new CPUs from Intel in terms of gaming are not able to match the 5800 X3D. And the funny thing is that the chart for the 5800 X3D is just a small line, almost like Intel is afraid to show it on the graphs. It's trying to prevent you from noticing that the CPU is even there. Alright, so let's sum it up really quickly. If you're looking for a CPU for gaming that will be able to support the 4000 series GPUs from NVIDIA and the new generation of graphics card from AMD, you should definitely look into the 5800 X3D, especially if you're looking best performance for the value. Sure, the new generation looks great and it has all the bells and whistles and everyone is hyped up for it, but I think it's worth being reasonable and looking for alternatives, which the 5800 X3D is a great alternative, especially for gamers. But if you really want to upgrade to the AM5 socket and use the DDR5 memory kits, I think you should wait till January. I believe, and the rumors are that in January, AMD will announce their new X3D line of processors for the 7000 series CPUs, and then we should be looking at a really high bump in performance in terms of gaming, especially when we combine the raw power of the 7000 series with the increased cache like the 5800 X3D has. Then it might be worth checking out the platform again. That's it from my side. If you enjoyed the video, remember to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I'm Laser. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you soon.